Over 70% of American citizens claim to be in the middle class. Statistics show that over 29% of Americans are actually in the lower class, while only 19% belong to the upper class, leaving only 52% for the middle class. What this signifies is that many think they belong to the middle class, but in actuality belong to the lower or upper class. But who defines the class system? What defines it? How did the middle class come to be? Why do class systems as a whole even exist? And is it possible to climb out of the middle class into the upper class? Hopefully by the end of today's video, I will have explained to you all these questions and more. Today, the upper class is clearly defined by a much higher income bracket, flashier cars, vacations, a littering of homes in various locations, and the ability to swipe a card without thinking about it. On the opposite side of the spectrum is the lower class, who in most definitions is defined by low income brackets, endless bills and loans to take care of, the creativity to stretch and reuse anything reusable, and the struggle to make sure that something is on the table at the end of each day. The middle class is where it gets murky, the in-between. The bills and loans still exist, but there's a hope for a decent paycheck at the end of the month to offset most of it. Vacations, if they ever happen, will usually be planned months, sometimes years ahead, to become some sort of a possibility. So there exists a question: what is the middle class? The middle class has been classified through many definitions and meanings in various scholarly fields, with some basing it off economical resources or levels of wealth a person has, credentials such as educational achievements, occupational status, and some have based it on culture and values. The middle class, according to the stratification system, are the individuals and households who fall between the upper and lower class. In the socio-economical hierarchy, and in some Western cultures, the middle class are considered to be the people who have more education than those in the lower class, have more income to use or save, and may also own assets or have investments. In the US, the actual size of the middle class is 52% as opposed to 70% who think they belong to the middle class. Basically, the middle class has enough disposable income to plan towards anything they want, like vacations, restaurants, or anything else. But however, they're usually not economically buoyant enough to purchase a house or car without loans or credit. One thing that has definitely changed about the middle class over the years is what is defined as it and the people who are in it. The middle class has evolved from being just that to being divided into the upper middle class and the lower middle class, with the upper middle class being defined by Max Weber as consisting of well-educated professionals with degrees and comfortable incomes, whilst the lower rings consist of semi-professionals. To fully understand what being middle class represents in the present society, we must first think back to what defined being middle class in times of the past. In past centuries and ages, being middle class meant that you had access and opportunity to high nobles at the time whilst not necessarily being one yourself. The class system, or the idea of social class, has remained a bone of contention for ages. Many wonder, how did it begin? Did the earliest to roam the earth decide that everyone could not be equal? Well, the class system predates our times and is simply a system in which people are placed in hierarchical categories which are based on their level of income, affluence, education, and belonging in the social ladder. The earliest historical mention of class system dates back to ancient Egypt. Based on state control, farmers were at the lowest of the ladder, with artisans being slightly above them, while scribes and officials were higher than both and can be seen by the outfits they wore. Class has always existed, but why it exists is still not entirely known. In past times, as far back as the 19th century, the middle class was defined by many things. Some of these have included the ability of a family to live in a home with more than one bedroom, the possession of at least one servant, the ability to send your male children to grammar schools and the female ones to private schools where they could learn such skills as sewing and music. The present of wooden toys were also a sign of middle class, as families in the lower class could not afford such luxury, and even if they could, it wasn't considered a necessity like food or clothing. If there were any social events like balls, getting an invite also represented that in some form you were somebody in society. In the present, being middle class is defined, especially in the US, as earning a median income between $42,000 to $126,000 a year. But looking at this holistically, this view also depends on where you live. Different standards and cost of living in various states affect how the people who reside there are viewed in the class system. So whilst research bureaus may give their statistics and research results, ultimately the definition and categorization of class depends not only on the income, but the culture and the society in question. One other thing that defines the middle class includes a certain level of economic security, at least a college education, education either sponsored by student loans or scholarships, a steady job in a professional or at least semi-professional capacity, such as being a teacher, writer, or doctor, and earning enough to be able to shuffle between restaurants, purchasing items just because, and planning towards vacations are all qualities that are used to define those in the middle class today. This leads to the follow-up question: is the idea of class systems still a good idea in present society? Well, to answer whether class systems are a good idea in present times is to answer, will human beings ever be able to rid themselves of the feeling or need to be better than their counterparts in every way, including financially? At some point, class systems may have tried to represent the parts that everyone plays in society, but today this is shift heavily from that notion. The social class system is not an idea dependent on itself, because as long as people don't earn the same income or have access to the same opportunities all over the world, the class system will continue to exist whether it's a good idea or not. The middle class can also not be obliterated, as the middle class are basically the people who have escaped the clutches of poverty and are able to fend for themselves with some change to spare, making them not in a state of poverty, but also at the same time not quite rich enough. This leaves only one ground for the common man, known as the middle class. This question also brings the idea of social mobility into question. Many argue that it's possible to move from one social class to the other, but links its dependency on many factors such as upskilling, income growth, and access to better opportunities and other factors. We know all of this is possible because reports show that poverty is declining every single year. The main contention in social mobility remains is how easy is it to move from the middle class to the upper class when research shows that over the past 5 years, the wealth gap continues to grow at an alarming rate. And that's only continually justified by a survey done by Pew Research Center that shows over 40% of people believe that moving from middle class to the upper class is the least likely kind of social mobility that can occur. Hopefully that video wasn't too pessimistic for you, and if you have enjoyed it, maybe you'll also enjoy why China's economical crisis might badly affect you. Anyway, other than that, I will see you next time.